Myself, Dr. Sonam Gupta, working in Ajay Kumar Garg Engineering College in the Department of Computer Science and Engineering as an associate professor. Today, I'm going to discuss about some introduction of the software project management. So, as we can see, that software project management, it has been come from the three words software, project, and management. So, firstly, let's see the meaning of each and every word. First comes, what is a project? So there are many dictionary definitions about what can be a project. Like a project, it can be a specific plan or a design. It can be a planned undertaking, or we can also say that it is a large undertaking. Like if we are having a public work which is scheduled, or which we are having any scheme of any public work, so that will also come under a project. Now, if we see all these three definitions which has been given, we can see that the key points in these definitions, these are the planning and the size of the task. So, project, it can be a small project if it is not a big one, like it can be of the 400 lines or many more lines. So, that depends upon the size. If the size of the project is large, so we have to include more and more number of resources, the staff will be included, the budget will be more, and similarly the time taken to complete the project, it will also be more. Similarly, the second term which comes for the project, it is the planning. So planning, it is again an important part in a project. Why? Because the project can be completed on time only if when the planning of the project is perfect in nature. Now the second term which comes, it is the management. So management, it comes from various activities have been involved in it, like planning, organizing, staffing, directing, monitoring, controlling, innovating, and representing. So let's see these terms one by one. Firstly, it is the planning. Planning means deciding what is to be done. Like if we get a project, so we have to plan out the things that what needs to be done in that particular project, what are the requirements of the project, all those things. Second one, it is the organizing. That is making the arrangements to complete the project. We have to identify what will be the client side, where the servers will be located, what will be the working location, etc. Third, it is the staffing. The people who are required to complete the project, they are included in the staffing side. Directing, it means that giving the instructions to the people how and when they will be working on it. When the first module, for example, it will be delivered, when the second module will be delivered, and so on. So that will comes into the directing, because someone is required to give the instructions to complete the project. If there is no someone who can give us the guidance or give us the instructions, if many people are involved, so then it will be a chaos for the project. Monitoring, checking on the progress. That means time and when we should monitor how the project is going. Like if I have to deliver a module within a 15 days, then I have to monitor that whether that particular module we are able to successfully deliver within 15 days or not. So that becomes the monitoring to check whether the project we are doing, it is going by pace or not. Controlling, taking the remedial actions to the holds up. Like if in the monitoring section, we comes to know that the project that we are doing, it is not going as per the pace which is required. So what will be the remedial actions to control that the project does not fall short of time? Next one, it is the innovating, which means coming up with the solutions when the problems emerging. So the people who are involved in the particular project, they should be capable enough to give the solutions if any project is falling short of time or there are some risk involved in it. And finally, it is the representing. That means listing with the clients, the users, developers, and other stakeholders which are present in the management system. Like the project, if we say, it is not just of a single person. Many people are involved in it. Firstly, it is the client who is giving the project. Second one, the users for which we are developing that particular project. Third one, the developers who are developing that particular project. And finally, the other stakeholders who are directly or indirectly involved in making that particular project successful. So if we combine this term project management, so project management, we can say that it is the discipline of initiating, planning, executing, controlling, and closing the work of a team to achieve the specific goals and to meet the specific success criteria. So we can say that a project, it is a temporary design to produce a unique product, it can be a service, or the result with a defined beginning and end. So we know from where we have to start and where we have to close that particular project. So well-defined boundaries have already been set in the project. We cannot say that we know how to start, but we don't know how to end that particular project. So well-defined boundaries are always there in the project. Now next comes in the project management, the project manager. So the project manager is responsible for identifying the users and the stakeholders and determining their needs. So if the project manager, it is not capable to identify who is the target audience, that means who are the users for which we are developing the project, he cannot give the particular guidance how and well the project will be going on, what will be the requirements, what can be the unforeseen risk that can be involved. So for that, project manager is required. Now the project manager, it coordinates with the team, ensuring that each task which has been approved by the software engineer, it is assigned, and each engineer, it has sufficient knowledge to perform that particular task. So this is again the responsibility of the project manager, which comes from the project management. He has to coordinate among various disciplines which are involved, and those disciplines, they will work accordingly to the requirements which are there in the system. So to do this well, the project manager, it must be familiar with every aspect of software engineering. So what is the major challenge over here is that if the project manager is not aware of the software engineering aspects of the system, then he cannot make all these changes and he cannot coordinate between various agencies which are involved, because he might not be knowing that what life cycle we will be using, how the users will be working, and so on. So this whole makes the system project management, and to make the project successful, the project manager plays an important role. Now, if we combine these terms, software project management. So software project management, it is aimed to ensure that the software is delivered on time, and the budget, it is also within the system, and the schedule constraints, and it satisfies the requirements of the client. So basically here comes the three main terms, that the software, it should be within the budget, the schedule should be within the time which we have committed to the client, and along with that, it should be according to the requirements of the client, because the client is giving the project so that it can be completed within the committed time, and for that he is paying too. So we need to identify that till how much time that particular project will be completed, that will become the time constraint, and according to those efforts and the time required, the budget will be calculated. So based on this budget, the schedule, and the requirements of the client, the software project management as a whole works. Now, if we see that over here, the product, project, and people, if we combine all these terms, so these three terms, it will also come under software, project, and management. Like the software, we can say it to be a product, project, it is again a project, and management, it comes out to be under the people. Now, there are 34 competencies which are involved in the software project management. Like if I talk about the product, so product in itself, it is having 11 competencies, like accessing the process, awareness of the process standards, defining the product, evaluating the alternative process which is involved, managing the requirements, managing the subcontractors which are involved, performing the initial assessments, then selecting the methods and the tools which are involved in it, tailoring the processes, tracking the quality process, and finally understanding the development activities. So all these 11 activities, they are related to a product itself. Now similarly, if I want to compute the competencies of a project, so again project, it is having like building a WBS. WBS, it stands for work breakdown structure. Documenting the plans, that is how and when we will be delivering the project, whether we will be giving it in module form or so. Estimating the cost. Similarly, we need to estimate the efforts as well. Managing the risk, because if we are developing any project, then certainly some risks are involved in it. Risk can be like the project, it is having, it cannot be delivered under the successful time period, or the budget of the project has been increased. Monitoring the development, that comes under the planning activity as well. Scheduling, again the scheduling, we can have many scheduling things, like we can have the PERT chart, the CPM charts, all these comes under the scheduling. selecting the metrics for that so that we can evaluate that how and well the project is going on, selecting the project management tools, tracking the process and tracking the progress of the project. So that comes out under the things which are related to the project itself. Now finally, the management, that means people. Now people are again having some competencies like appraising performances, handling the intellectual property, holding the effective meetings, interactions and communications, leadership, managing the change, negotiating the things successfully, planning the careers, presenting effectively, recruiting, selecting a team, and then finally a team building. So these 34 competencies, they make a particular software project management. So if we are using any project, or we are developing any project under the software project management, then all these 34 competencies come into the scene, and we need to take care of all these competencies so that we can give a successful project to the client. Now next come why we need SPM, why software project management is required, why we need to document all these things, why we need to have all these 34 competencies in the system. Now first one is that the software, it is said to be an intangible product. So since it is an intangible product, we need to take care of it, since it is not going to be changed again and again. The main problem with any software project is that the underlying technology keeps on changing very fast, and the technology says that the product which has been developed in the previous technology, it might not be working for the new technology. So likewise, we have to upgrade our system, upgrade our software as and when the new technology comes. So the underlying technology, it changes and advances so frequently and rapidly that the experience of one product, it may not be applied to the another one. So we are having to gain new experiences for each and new technology. All such business and environment constraints, they begin risk in the software project, and hence it is essential to manage the software projects efficiently. So if always the technology is keep on going on change, and we cannot have the advantage of our past experience, so definitely the risk will also increase in it. So for that, we need some kind of system so that we can manage the efficiency of the projects. Now we can have this triangle diagram for the SPM, like time, cost and quality, and for that there is a scope. There is always a scope for the time, cost and the quality. Like it is an essential part of the software organization to deliver the quality product, keeping the cost within the client's budget, and deliver the project as per the schedule. Now what we are again having three things over here. Deliver the quality product. The product should be well in quality. It should satisfy all the requirements of the client. Secondly, the budget. The budget, it should not exceed the pocket of the client. So client must be having some budget. Accordingly, the project must be developed, that we should not compromise with the product quality. Along with it, the cost is also maintained. And thirdly, it should be delivered within the time period. So time constraint again becomes an important part. Now therefore, software project management, it is essential to incorporate the requirements along with the budget and time. So we need to have the user requirements along with the budget and the time. So these three things, like time, cost and quality, it becomes an important aspect in SPM. Next comes the vision and the scope document. This is the document which is required to be maintained for any project. Like for example, we are having suppose a problem statement. That means a client comes to us and he gives to us the project problem statement. So what all things we need to include in it? We need to have the project background, the stakeholders, who are the stakeholders who will be dealing in the project, the users, that means the target audience who are being affected and for whom we are making that particular project, the risk which is involved in the system, and the assumptions which we are going to have, so that the client may also know that these are the assumptions and accordingly the project will be delivered. The second, it is the vision of the solution. So vision of the solution means we must be having a vision statement, the features which are involved in that particular thing, the scope of the phased release. This is optional in nature. If we are having the module by module release, then we can have it.
And finally, the features that we will not be developing, like client, it may be having some unrealistic requirements or so, or maybe that we are having some project which already have such features, so we will not be developing those projects. We will simply be incorporating it in our module itself. So these are the things that will be included in the vision of the solution. Now, next come to seeing that what can be a difference between a job and a project. So, if we see that projects are similar, more or less similar like the jobs. So, if we see over here, jobs and exploration, there are two parts, and the project is lying between the job and the exploration. So, what we can say a job is, it is a repetition of very well defined and understood task, and the uncertainty is also very less in it. So, job, we can say these are the routine works which are involved, like I am having a fixed schedule, fixed routine, that can term as a job. And next, the final part which is involved over here, it is the exploration part, and there is an uncertainty of outcome. That means we are, like, for example, we are trying to find a cure for any disease or so, and the outcome, it is very uncertain because we do not know that whether we will be successful or not. So that becomes the exploration part. Now the project, it lies somewhere between the job and the exploration part. So project, it always lies between job and the exploration. That means it is having some uncertainty. The uncertainty in the project, it is more than the job but less than that of the exploration part. Next is the characteristics of the project. Like we have seen, it is between the job and the exploration. Now let's see what are the characteristics that will be involved in a project. So our task is more project-like if it is having all these features. So like it is a non-routine in nature because it is not a job. It is very well planned, aiming at a specific target, work carried out for a customer, involving several specialisms. It is made up of several different phases, constrained by time and the resources, and it is very large and complex. So if it is having all these characteristics, then we can say that we are developing a project, and then we can easily identify that whether we are doing a job, whether we are moving towards an exploration part, or whether we are having a project. So project, it must be having all these features. Now next comes, we are talking about the software projects, and we are having other normal projects as well, like the hardware and all. So we want to know that is software project, it is actually different from the other projects, or they are more or less similar. The things where these software projects differ, these are the invisibility, complexity, conformity, and the flexibility. These are the four parts where the software projects are different from the normal projects. Like invisibility, it means that we are not able to touch that particular software, so it is invisible in nature. Complexity, many techniques are involved, many specialisms are involved, so that's why it is a project. So for that, since many techniques and specialism are involved, that means the project, it is complex in nature. And next one, it is the conformity, and finally it is the flexibility. They are more flexible, so it makes the software more problematic to build than other engineered artifacts. These are the differences from where the software projects, they are different from normal projects. Now these are the various activities which are covered by the project management. Like we are having a feasibility study. So in this feasibility study, we are going to see that actually what we are developing, it is of any worth or not. From the feasibility study, if it is of worth, then we are going to plan out the things, how that particular system will be going on. In the plan, we are going to see how we are going to do that particular project. And finally, it is a project execution. That means we are going to do that particular project which has been assigned to us. So first thing which comes, it is the feasibility study. That means, is the project, it is technically visible, feasible and worthwhile from the business point of view. So we are going to have the budget in it. Planning only done if the project is feasible. In the feasibility study, we comes to know that we can have this particular project, then we are going to plan out about the things, and if the planning, it is successful, then we are going to execute it. So implement the plan, but the plan, it may be changed as we go along. So plan, it can be changed as and when the time comes. This is the software development life cycle ISO. So this is the same as the software life cycle which we are having, but it has been divided according to the ISO thing. The thing is divided into system and the software accordingly. Like for the system, we are having requirement analysis, architecture design, and the requirement analysis. This is the part of the requirements. So in the requirements, we are having three things: requirement analysis, architecture design. It comes under the system. And again, we are having the requirement analysis for the software part. In the design, we are having again two things: architecture design and the system analysis, requirement analysis. Now again here, it comes under the software part because we are going to design the software. The next one, which is the code and testing in the software lifecycle, it comes under detailed design, code and test, integration, qualification testing, integration, and finally the qualification testing. Now this qualification testing and integration, it comes under the system part, which we are going to integrate, but the detailed design, code and testing, integration, and the qualification testing, it comes for the software part. Finally, the installation and acceptance of the project, this is the installation and acceptance support, it comes under the software part. So we can see that the requirements, design, code and testing, and installation, these are the main approaches that any software lifecycle involves. Now we have divided this according to our requirements, according to the project requirements, and again further we have divided it into two broad categories: system and the software. This is the description of the life cycle. Like requirement analysis, for the requirement analysis we do the requirement elicitation. That means what does the client need. To identify the requirements of the client, what the client needs, we need to have the requirement elicitation part. After the requirement elicitation comes the analysis part. That means we are going to convert the customer facing requirements into the equivalents that the developers can understand. Because customers, it can be having any vague requirements. Now to convert those requirements so that the developers can understand, that is the part of the analysis, that whether those requirements are possible or not. So now basically what requirements will cover? It will cover the functions, the quality, the resource constraints, that means the cost, the staff which are included. Architecture design, this architecture design, it is based on the requirements of the system. Defines the components of the system. The components, it can be the hardware. The component, it can be a software or the organizational. The software requirements, it will come out of this architecture design. So basically in requirements, what we have done, we have converted the requirements of the client according to the requirements which can be understood by the developer. Now at the developer side, he will be doing this architecture design. This architecture design, it is based on the requirements which we have calculated earlier. Code and testing of the individual components, like if we are going to develop the software module by module, then for each module, for each component, we have to code, and then after coding, we need to test those particular components as well. So for this, the coding and testing is required, and just as I have shown, it comes under the software part. Integration, that means putting the components together. Since we have developed many modules and we are going to deliver the project as a whole, the client or the any user, they will be using the software as a package itself. So we need to integrate all the modules that are involved in the system as a whole. Qualification testing, it means that testing the system, not just the software. So what we are doing, we are testing the system as a whole, not just the software. Installation, we have made all the changes, we have done the coding, testing, all the parts have been done. Now we are going to install our project at the client side. So this process of making the system operational. The system for which we were working, for which we have done the requirements and all, for that we need to make it operational. It includes setting up, standing the data, setting the system parameters, installing on the operational hardware on which that particular software will be working, the user trainings, etc. that are required so that the project can work. And finally, it is the acceptance support. It means including the maintenance and the enhancement. Like we have delivered a software, but some issues come to the user, so we need to enhance some of its modules. So that comes under the acceptance support. Some modules are not working. The developer has to see why those modules are not working. So that comes under the maintenance support. There are certain ways of categorizing the projects. So we can distinguish the different types of project, and it is important as different type of tasks, it need different type of project approaches. So basically we can say the project can be information system or the embedded system. Similarly, we can say that whether it is a objective based or a product based. Like if we are developing any web page or a website, that comes under the information system, where we are just sending the information. User can check its mail, it can have the access to any information, news, etc. That becomes an information system which we are developing. And what are embedded system? Like we are having any blood pressure machine, and the blood pressure recordings that are being sent via cloud computing to any website, then we are able to calculate, okay, this was the measurements of my BP for last 15 days. I can send that data to any hospital, etc. So that becomes the embedded system part, where we are having any hardware involved in the system. Second category that can be we can see for the system, it is the objective based versus the product based. So objective based, it is simple for any information part, and the product based, where we are having any delivered any product in the form of the IoT, etc. Now as we have seen, the management, it involves planning, organizing, staffing and the directing. So planning, it is deciding what is to be done. Organizing, that means making the arrangements. Staffing, selecting the right people for that particular project. And directing, we need to give the instructions to the people. Monitoring, controlling, innovating and representing. So these all comes under management, as well as these comes under the project planning as well. So we can say that the project is planned perfectly if we are able to monitor that particular project, we are able to control the actions which are required to maintain those projects. Innovating, we are coming up with the solutions whenever any problem emerges, and representing the project successfully to the stakeholders. Next comes how we can set the objective of any project. So we are having all the requirements, so we need to set an objective for the project. So we need to answer a question, how do we have to do to have a success? What do we have to do if I want to make a project successful? So that is the objective, and for making that objective, we need to have certain goals and the sub goals. For our objective, we need to have a project authority. A project authority is required, which sets the scope of the project, which allocates and approves the costs which are there in the system. The project authority, it can be a group of a person or it can be a single person as well. Like it can be a project board, a project management board. We can have a steering committee as well, who can decide that what is the scope of the project, how the project cost will be allocated, and whether they are approvable or not. Now for the objective of a project, it can be defined, if I complete this sentence, the project will be regarded as a success if certain parameters have been passed, that means the project has reached its objective, rather like post conditions for the project. So we need to focus what will be put it in the place, rather than how activities will be carried out. How activities will be carried out, that is a part of the planning. Now, but what we have to put, that is a part of the objective in the system. So we can say the key points that we gathered in this lecture, these are that the projects are non-routine, that means they are uncertain. The particular problems of the project, that means they lack the visibility, they are intangible in nature. The clear objectives, they are essential, which can be objectively accessed. And the stuff happens, it is not usually to keep precisely. We need to control the things of the risk which are involved. And finally, we need to communicate. Thank you.